Oh, there's someone commenting already before we even hit
Whoa, we have
live.
a first comment, guys. Welcome.
Bob.
Bob, drop your P.O. box in the comments. We're going to send you a prize for being first comment on the live stream today. That's
Before we even hit live.
incredible. Bob Rush, everybody.
Yes.
Last name
yes.
clearly applies.
All right. Well, we are live. All right. I'm even gonna add everyone because I'm already getting messages, posts in the group asking
You're tagging everybody. You're tagging everybody.
I am.
Okay.
I just did it.
Whoa, everybody.
So I did this because I'm already getting messages, comments, posts. Where is the stream? Well, here is the stream, ladies and gentlemen.
Emergency podcast. I don't know how many we've done, you guys, but if you've seen any of our previous emergency podcasts, something happens. This is an homage or a throwback to one of our previous emergency podcasts when we spent almost 90 minutes talking about Walmart and the entire situation behind Walmart. So feel free to go to the Christian Brindle YouTube channel. We have all of our previous emergency podcasts on there.
Yes.
Today is something new, a headline issue, if I may, something that I personally believe could be apocalyptic. I've already gotten some naysayers saying that, oh, it's not going to happen, but I think it could be. It has the potential to be, rather.
It's definitely made a lot of noise. You know, we have 60 people watching live, and so that tells me that there's a lot of people that have interest in this topic, right? And man, there's a lot. There's a lot for us to dig into. Where do you think we should begin?
Well, let's start with I think we should explain how CMS works a little bit for like the brand new agent, because even someone who understands CMS to a certain degree, they seem to be operating differently all the time. So it's really hard to keep track. But essentially, like a quick overview, CMS has, similar to other government bodies, they propose regulations. And then after those regulations are proposed, they basically vote if it should go to a vote, and then they vote to enact it. Is that essentially how it works, Christian? Is that kind of the process?
I mean, more or less. I think
an oversimplified version, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's fair, and it's one of those things where CMS is a government entity like any other, where they're understaffed. Most of their people that work in the agency are bureaucrats, pencil pushers, lawyers, and my experience has been completely removed from what's actually going on in the industry. Like it's crazy to me. I almost think about it like an ancient king that doesn't know what's happening in the streets of his kingdom, and he's like chilling. He's getting back rubs. He's eating lots of food all the time. He's got like 16 wives. And like there's people being killed in the streets and dying, and they're just like they have no idea what's going on. And like
that's you. You're the ancient king.
No, CMS is the
CMS
king.
is okay. I thought you were calling yourself the ancient king. That's why I was laughing so hard. I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
No,
it doesn't know it's No, that's a great analogy for CMS for sure. Isn't that Utah? Yeah, I kind of thought that was also a Utah throwback.
Maybe a conversation for another day. So, and of course, I've said this before, but I'll say it again because I feel like there's a lot of people that don't understand this part of it. The head of CMS is oftentimes an appointed position by the president of the United States.
Here we go. And red versus blue.
I don't mean to make it red versus blue, but the current administration has put a ton of these new rules in place. And it just is what it is. It's sky being blue type of fact. I'm not saying anything outside of that, but like that's a factor, right?
So
Like,
can we address that, like what we talked about privately? I'd like to address something
yes,
while this is coming up, because I understand there's a lot of red and a lot of blue, and there's a lot of in between folks, and that's all fine and dandy. I, being what I feel a realist on the entire situation, is what I was explaining to Christian is, big business here in the US, they're the ones that are really making the decisions, in my opinion, at the end of the day. Lobbying, all the donations that are going into super PACs and all these other, political funds. So when it comes to whether it's regulation or deregulation, I still feel like all the decision making is mostly coming from big business here in the US. So that's kind of, whenever I'm looking at any type of new rules or regulations, that's my thinking cap. Like that's my what I'm looking at the new rules through is like, how does this benefit big business in the US? Because I
right.
think it's rare at this point. When was the last time big business in the US like got attacked by the government? The government's like scared to even go after them at this point, right? Like too big to fail, etc. So, that being said, do these rules, this is kind of a weird one because I don't know if it hurts or helps some of the big FMOs, the insurance carriers. I don't know, in that span of looking at it, where it falls.
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting. I mean, you brought up a point, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but
No, do it.
um, that was interesting to me. I don't know how much I personally believe that this is what's going on, but it might be something to think about. Um, could it be that there's a force behind the scenes lobbying to essentially get involved and disrupt the independent agent side of the business, right? And I don't know. I mean, obviously, none of us know what's happening behind the scenes and everything like that. My opinion is, I think you can kind of directly tie a lot of these changes to when this new director of CMS took power. Call recordings, 48-hour scope rule, now this. Um, I think it has a lot more to do with that than anything else. But I think there's certainly a possibility that there is something like that going on. Um,
Okay,
let's
well, let
talk.
me rephrase the question then.
Yeah.
When it comes to new regulations that CMS rolls out, do you believe that the insurance carriers are mostly behind the rules that go into effect? Like, they have the ability to veto essentially certain rules. In my opinion, I think that's kind of what's going on behind, not on every single issue, but on a lot of issues. I feel like the carriers have a lot of weight, a lot of control. Do you think that's true or no?
I don't think that the carriers are mostly like behind it necessarily. People are asking what the new rule is. We're getting to it. I promise.
This is
um,
yeah, we're getting to
we're
it.
leading
We're
up.
trying to lay that. We're trying to lay some groundwork for everybody before we get into the meat of it.
Yes, I don't think that the carriers are on in favor of 48-hour scopes. I don't think the carriers are in favor of the call recordings. I don't think the carriers are in favor of essentially crippling FMOs and things like that. Because you got to think about it from the perspective of like, what good does that do to a carrier?
Right.
FMOs drive business for a carrier. FMOs are heavily impactful in the distribution for a carrier.
Yeah, but
Um,
a lot of the FMO income is coming out of the bottom line of that insurance carrier. So again, looking at the new rule, if they're trying to, I almost look at it as a supply chain from insurance carrier to agent. Seems like they're carving out the middle meat, right? And they're taking it back. That's how, again, that's my opinion. That's the way I'm looking at it, from almost more of a capitalistic sense, is like, how is this benefiting the business? And I could totally be wrong. This could just be regulations coming from the top.
Yeah, it's so hard to say for sure, right? Because we don't know exactly what's going on. It could be something like that. If I had to put my money on it, I would say probably not myself. Um, but I could be wrong. I don't know. We've been accused of speculating before on this platform by by the ultimate pencil pushers out there, and So I
Okay,
hate to speculate.
I want to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
So, guys, I haven't read into this as much as Christian has. I'm going to tell everyone here on the stream. I have gone through some of the highlights myself personally. Christian has spent a lot more time on this. So I'm kind of learning with you guys as far as all the details that are in this. It was almost 500 pages of proposed CMS rules that came forward. And right off the bat, the first thing that is worth mentioning is that if it's proposed, it doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. We've already seen that happen previously where certain things got proposed and then it didn't get implemented. And even though everyone says they know what's going to get implemented and what's not, almost nobody knows. So that being said, Christian, of what you know so far, is this on like a scale of 1 to 10 on scares Christian, keeps Christian up at night? 10 being like, oh my gosh, this is really bad news. 1 being like, I didn't even want to read it. It was so boring and didn't even affect me. Like, what would you give it?
It was a 9.
Whoa,
It was a
that's pretty
9.
scary.
Yeah,
And
it's
9 out of 10 on the scare scale. Okay.
like, and to put it into perspective, like if we
Yeah,
go
and
back to
why?
the previous ones, right?
Yeah,
The final rules on the call recordings was like a 3. The final rule and the scope of appointment 48-hour rule was like a 4. To me,
sure.
this is a 9. And I think, and I actually went through and took screenshots of a bunch of really
He
important
has the
aspects of this.
receipts.
So I have receipts for you guys.
I love that.
I spent hours today digging through this for you guys. I rescheduled a few of my meetings because I felt like this was more of a priority for me to be ready for you guys.
There we go.
So I'm going to be kind of going through this as we go, but the reason why I am saying it's a 9 is because to me, I think that so this is to me an attempted attack on the FMO's business model. I don't see it any other way other than that. It is an attack on override. It's trying to either reduce or completely eradicate override. It's trying to reduce or completely eradicate marketing money. It's trying to reduce or completely eradicate like HRAs, anything that's an additional payment above and beyond the general agent's compensation, right?
Right.
The reason for it is CMS is stating that they believe, now granted, overrides, marketing money have been going on for years.
Right.
Why all of a sudden this is a thing, right? HRAs have been going around for how many years now? 4 years,
Right.
5 years? But anyway, but the reason that their reasoning, and they mention this several times in the document, there's a lot of things that has to do with a very a very large diversity of topics in this document, but it is heavily concentrated on broker compensation. The word compensation is used over 130 times in the document. The word FMO is used over 35 times, if I remember correctly.
Brokers compensation over 100 times.
130 times plus.
130 times. So that's almost every page. If you look at it that way, I mean, it's on 1 out of 4 pages. So yeah, I mean that's a big focus on the document then.
Yeah, it's a huge focus on the document. And so CMS's argument that they make throughout the document is they believe that plans are being recommended to beneficiaries based on which carrier is providing the most extra little incentives,
right,
and not what's best for the member. That is their reasoning, their line of thought on this. Now, to provide some context for you guys before we go any deeper, for anybody that's just like, what the hell is going on? There was very recently a proposal put out by CMS.
I'm going to drop, guys, while he's explaining this, I'm going to drop the link to it in the comments in case it hasn't already been dropped. So if you really want to look at all 500 pages, I'm going to post the link right now, but continue, Christian.
Yeah, so very recently dropped, and essentially it is going to be open to dialogue. They're going to take in comments and feedback up until, I believe it was January 5th was the day. And then they're going to essentially revisit it and have a conversation about it and really bring it to the table and kind of kick around these ideas. And so there's a lot in here.
Guys, I just dropped the link. It's in the comments. If you want to read it yourself, 500 pages. Have fun. Happy IEP, everybody.
So let me kind of dig into these receipts a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, so let's start at the top. Go through your list.
So early in the document, there is a table of contents of sorts, and in it, it's almost a summary of kind of the topics they're going through.
Okay.
This is how they describe the agent/broker compensation topic. We propose modifications to agent/broker compensation requirements to further ensure payments arrangements and structures are aligned with CMS's statutory obligation to set limits on compensation to ensure that the use of compensation creates incentives for agents and brokers to enroll prospective enrollees in plans to best fit their needs. So there's a lot of language like that.
Okay,
the focus.
CMS's defense, do you think that's happening? That agents or brokers or even entire FMOs are purposely soliciting one carrier over another based on compensation and or marketing bonuses, etc.?
I believe that certainly it's happening somewhat.
Yeah.
Do I think the majority of agents and FMOs are 100% just pushing what's going to, benefit them the most? I don't. I honestly don't. I think that the average person, the average agent is looking out for what's best for their clients and everything else between. I'm not going to go as far as to say that it does not happening. Right. Certainly it's happening somewhat.
For sure.
I think it happens in every industry, every business.
For sure.
And I think for me to say anything otherwise might be just a little naive on my part, wishful thinking.
Yeah. It's not happening anywhere.
So
everyone's getting written equally.
Okay. So I want to kind of dig into a couple of things with you guys. Okay. And if you guys want me to post some of these screenshots, let me know in the chat, and I'm happy to later on in the evening.
You have the page number that are you able to see what? Oh,
I don't. I didn't get the page number. I was going through it and I took pictures of things I thought that were really important and really relevant. Good. Okay,
let's keep going through the list.
There's a section of the Act that states, Act requires that CMS develop guidelines to ensure that compensation to agent and brokers creates incentives to enroll individuals in an MA plan that are intended to meet their best healthcare needs. To that end, for many years, CMS has set upper limits on the amount of compensation agents and brokers can receive for enrolling Medicare beneficiaries into an MA and PDP plan. We have learned, however, that many MA and PDP plans, as well as third-party entities with which they contract, such as field marketing organizations, have structured payments to agents and brokers that have the effect of circumventing compensation caps. We also note that these additional payments appear to be increasing. In this rule, we're proposing to generally prohibit contract terms between MA organizations and agents, brokers, and other third-party or marketing organizations that may interfere with the agent or broker's ability to objectively assess and recommend the plan that is the best fit of the beneficiary's healthcare needs. Oof. So that right there is like very accusatory, right? There's accusations.
Very black and white too. That's not like, you don't need to be a lawyer to understand what Christian just read. Like, it's very clear what their intention is. Like, they do not want anything above normal commission to be paid to the agent. Like, period. That's what that just said.
I'll continue.
Yeah, please do.
We are proposing to make conforming edits to the Part D agent broker compensation rules. Collectively, we believe the impact of these proposed changes will better align with statutory requirements and intent to ensure that the use of compensation creates incentives for agents and brokers to enroll beneficiaries in the plan that best fits the beneficiary's healthcare needs. Further, Such changes align with the Biden-Harris administration's commitment.
You believe a lot of it's politically motivated. A lot of
I
times
do.
I don't, but man, the fact that they just quoted the Biden Harris campaign in there, I mean that sounds like someone is writing that in. I mean, that's unbelievable.
And that's not the last time it's
How
quoted
many
like that.
times how many times is Biden I want to know how many times Biden Harris is mentioned in this document.
Several times. I didn't count that one, but um, I'll have to go
Oh
through and
my
actually like
gosh.
look and see how many. Okay, so I'm gonna go to a next page. Okay, next part. I'm kind of jumping around in the document. Okay,
Yeah.
we seek comment on this proposal. We are also proposing to increase the compensation rate described at various part of the document to add certain appropriate administrative costs. In particular, we believe that the administrative costs of the licensing and training and testing requirements and the recording requirements, phone call recordings, may warrant an increase in the rate of compensation given to significant and predictable costs of these mandatory activities. Based on our fair market value analysis, we believe that these activities would warrant increasing the base compensation rate by $31. I am not 100% sure how to read that. Like, I don't know if it's like going to raise the street level Medicare Advantage renewal to $31, if it's going to go up by $31. It's not 100% clear on that. I looked
That
far and
was yeah.
wide.
That was not black and white. There was some vagary for sure
Yeah.
with
A-
that explanation.
and be updated annually as part of a scheduled compensation rate updated description.
Was that 30?
Therefore,
Someone's asking in the comments 31 a year or 31 a month?
I would imagine it's 31 well, it's also not clear if it's talking about overrides or if it's talking about
PDP.
I don't know. I don't like it's not talking about PDP there. It's talking
I thought
about
didn't it mention PDP commissions?
it did on the prior page, but I moved away from it.
Mm.
It's override, I believe, is what they're talking about for a year.
Mr. Merwin is saying that's per year.
Yes. So,
Thank you, Tony.
okay, I
Shout
continue.
out to Tony, everybody.
Therefore, we propose to add beginning in 2025 that FMV will be increased by $31 to account for administrative payments included under the compensation rate and to be updated annually in compliance with the requirements for FMV updates. We believe it is necessary to increase the rate for compensation by $31 based on the estimated costs for training, testing, and call recording that would need to be covered by the single enrollment based payment. We are proposing to begin with a one-time $31 increase, including various locality-specific adjustments with annual FMV updates to this amount as described by the regulation, including adding the current year FMV and the product of the current year and MA growth penetration for aged and disabled beneficiaries. We note that we are not proposing a proportionate increase to compensation for renewals, and we considered this is determining the amount by which we are proposing the increased rate for compensation for enrollees. Couple of other things, and then I want to kind of kick around some feedback on this.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, fair market value. So that was another
yes.
thing. FMV's fair market value, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Tony gets another shout out.
Another gold star. This was interesting too. Okay, so I want to say one more part, and then I want to stop and have some dialogue, but then I have more.
Oh boy,
this was interesting. They estimate the number of agent brokers selling Medicare at 100,000. The Bureau now it says the Bureau of Labor Statistics occupational handbook lists about 340,000 insurance agents, including life insurance agents, auto insurance agents. We assume 1/3 or are partially involved with health plans. The estimate about 100,000 is just doing Medicare. The number of new enrollees per year For non-employer MA plans and standalone prescription drug plans, 2 million. And the percent of new enrollments affected by agent brokers, 50% is what this says.
Half of it. So half of enrollments are coming from a broker.
That's what this is saying.
And there's only 100,000 agents.
Well, it says 100,000 as an estimate, but then it says there's 340,000. I think they're talking about Medicare only. But next to the 50% number, it says we do not have any data on this. Furthermore, many agents work for themselves and do not have to report to CMS about the number of new enrollments.
By the way, these numbers are completely made up. I just want everybody to know, like, that's wow, that is wild.
Traditionally, we have used 50% when we do not have data. So I wanted to put that in there because
the clown show.
Okay, first of all, 100,000 agents is a ridiculous number as their estimate. There's no so many more agents as 100,000 agents. I wanted to mention that because I wanted to kind of point out how clueless these people are.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're clueless. Like, all right, we use the term 50% when we have no fucking idea. is basically what I just read. Right? Like,
oh my gosh.
Okay, so I have plenty more screenshots, but let's kick this around a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's kind of kick this around. So what are your thoughts, Mr. Shelton?
I think the scariest thing you said so far was that one line where they basically said our goal is to generally prohibit additional compensation to the broker. That's a very clear language. And that's like, I had seen some screenshots and I saw some chatter and I looked at a tiny bit of it myself, haven't been able to dig into it, but that type of language makes it very clear to me what their goal is. So whether this passes or not, any of the stuff that's already been talked about, you can set aside the details, right? But the overarching goal, if the goal is to try to eliminate additional compensation, then that's very clear. Now, I have a feeling it's not going to be as scary as any of it sounds, at least right away, because that's right. When you're boiling a frog, you're turning up that heat nice and slow, right? If you turn the heat up too fast, you'll have everyone jump out of Medicare overnight, essentially, right? If all the agents jump out, that's going to be havoc. Again, 50% of these agents are the business, so they can't get rid of all the agents. They can't just disappear. So I have a feeling they will try to prohibit some of this, but I don't think it'll be as prohibited as maybe it sounds right now. Still, it's crazy. And it's crazy that they dropped this in the middle of AEP too. It kind of like, think about it. Like everyone's so busy writing business and they just like, they're just going to like slide these proposals like out there. Like, hey guys, have a great AEP. By the way, like this might be the last AEP that you get paid what you get paid. Like,
right.
It's crazy.
Right. All right. Should we do some more?
Well, first, I want to ask you, do you think it'll be as prohibitive as some of this language is making it sound? If it does pass at all?
I don't see it passing at all in the regard that it's going, that it's mentioning specifically. I think it's going to, here's my thought. I think something will pass. If history's told us anything, when they've put out a proposal the last couple of years, something passes. Does it pass exactly the way that it was originally proposed? Oftentimes not. Like, for example, the banning of third-party marketing organizations from buying leads.
Yep.
That didn't pass because it was extreme.
It was.
They reserve the right to pick it up later and be extreme later. But that to me is part of it. I think a version of it will pass, but it will probably be a very much a meet in the middle type of compromise, right? I don't think it'll be as severe as some parts of the document kind of make it sound to be. is kind of what my thoughts
Well,
are.
let me ask you another question too. I know we're going to get into more of the meat of this. We've got another 30 minutes. We want to keep tearing it apart. But do you think, as an independent agent, could this actually be beneficial to you if you aren't an upline, you're not an agency, an FMO, NMO? Is the individual agent actually going to potentially come out on top because of something like this?
Here's what I would say. I think I want to choose my words carefully here. I
Tony
would
says
say,
no. Tony says no.
yeah,
That's what Tony
I
said.
I would say no, because think about it like this, right? The rules are going after additional payments,
Right.
Through various different sources, marketing dollars, HRAs, overrides, things like that. Let's say it changes so significantly that it makes it incredibly hard to be profitable as an FMO. For anybody that's watching this, how much does your FMO help you grow?
Right.
For me, I wouldn't be where I am without the help of FMO partners or throughout my
100%.
career, right? And so I think that it's a gut punch in that regard, and I have my own theories too. I am of the opinion that long term, what they are trying to do, and for those who say I just speculate, this is me speculating, right? So all disclaimers, but I have full belief that the long term vision is to push everybody to be able to self enroll with Medicare and cut out that middleman, as you said. If you kind of look at it, I think for that to happen, it has to be a gradual thing. It can't happen overnight. But
Right.
why else are they having us push people to SHIP? Why else are they having us push people to 1-800-MEDICARE? And it's just a gradual thing. It's like, okay, let's tighten regulation. Let's make it harder for them to do business. Next step in the master plan, let's try to squeeze out and get rid of a lot of FMOs. FMOs help agents grow, right? Like
So,
now, I want to say one more thing, and then
okay.
I want to hear what you have to say. There's always going to be somebody that's be like, my FMO don't do shit for me, man, and my FMO sucks, and override vultures and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Understood. There's good and bad to everything, but there's a lot of very great and helpful FMOs out there that play a huge role in an agent growing, scaling, being successful, and being as successful as they can be, right? So I think it is. I think it can harm an agent by making it harder for the FMOs to thrive. Potentially, I mean, it could be, there could be some good in it too. There's probably some abuse going on at
Sure.
some places, right?
Sure.
But I think let's say we snapped our fingers and FMOs were gone, and it was just agents and the carriers. Agent in their garage or in their basement.
Chaos
Right?
overnight.
Like,
yeah, they can't support any of these agents.
Right. FMOs also
Right.
help. FMOs also help keep compliance in order. FMOs help in so many ways with direct communication to the agent,
For
and,
sure.
and they provide training, they provide communication. There's a lot that I think an FMO brings to the table, and I think a lot of agents sometimes don't really realize it when they're looking from afar.
Okay, so one comment here says you're giving them way too much credit. There is no master plan, which I will say
fair.
that is, I think that is fair. Now, here's one thing I was going to say too is, do you think that the government is looking at the technology healthcare space? And does the government think in the near future it'll be so easy for people to self-enroll that they'll have like their doctor and their medical information will be all right there on a screen? Something that's going to simplify it to the point that maybe there is a reason to push. I mean, we've already talked about ChatGPT and AI, and when is that coming and what's that going to look like? Maybe this is the start of that, right? Like, again, not to have my tinfoil hat on here, but
You're speculating, Glenn.
I'm speculating. And some of this is 100% just my own conjecture. However, maybe they're realizing they're going to be able to cut out more agents in the near future. And maybe that is the push, right? Now, is there a master plan or not? I don't know. Like that person commented, said that the name didn't come up. I'm sorry, but I have a hard time believing sometimes that the government can function in any way, mischievous or for the good. Like, it just seems like it's so ineffective that to think that there's a master plan at all, it does seem silly.
I agree with that. I
Yeah,
agree with that.
yeah.
I think that's a very, very good point.
Let's keep going as far as your screenshots.
Okay.
We got 25 minutes here, you guys. I want to keep tearing through this. Obviously, Christian and I can kind of talk about the actual meat of this at any point, but let's keep rolling.
Now, I will say this before I continue. I still haven't been through the whole thing. I spent 2 hours on this today, guys. I did not get through the whole thing. So I am going through what I've found so far. I'm going to continue to go through it until I get through it all. And I'll be bringing you guys new information as I find it in here. But okay, so I found this part kind of interesting. Okay, so there's a spot that says CMS requires that agents be certified. Duh, right?
Right.
As evidenced by attending training and passing certain tests. In order to sell Medicare products, many agents and brokers and many plans prefer the use of the recognized certification organizations such as AHIP. Then they dropped a link to the Ritter AHIP ebook as an example of what they're talking about. I was like, what publicity for Ritter insurance marketing?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So it's like ritter.com/blog. What is AHIP certification, ebook, blah, blah, blah. For training and testing. The AHIP training and certification costs $175. However, some plans provide a discount of $50, and some plans will pay for the training in full. The training allows 3 attempts for passing. If the agent or broker fails 3 times, they will not be recognized for certification, even if they eventually pass. For these plans that do recognize continued attempts, the agent must pay an additional $175. Therefore, we believe it is reasonable to set the average cost of this training at $125 and assume that most agents and brokers pass within their first 3 attempts. We lack data on this and invite stakeholder comment. We are treating the $125 as non-labor business expense and invite comments on this assumption. Finally, we note that this $125 fee corresponds to $12.50 per enrollee. Since we estimate there are 2 million new enrollees, half of which 1 million enrollees are affected by the 100,000 agents or brokers. Remember, they're just making this shit up. They admitted to us they don't really know the numbers.
I'd say this is wild, dude, to hear the numbers getting thrown around like this.
Yeah, the numbers that they don't have,
This is crazy.
Like Integrity has more than 100,000 agents by themselves in the Medicare space. Like,
right.
Anyway, I digress.
I mean, what if there was 100,000 actually writing agents, though? Like agents who actually submit. I don't know.
Do you think there's 100,000 agents writing business? I don't.
I think there's a number of total number of agents contracted to sell Medicare.
Yeah.
But then there's a number of agents who are actually selling Medicare, and those are 2 different numbers. So I don't know. 100,000 might be the agents who are actually submitting more than 4 apps a year. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe. I don't know. Okay. They finished talking about the 100,000 agents and brokers, implying that on average, each agent and broker recruits 10 enrollees. I find that interesting. They use the word recruits enrollees. You know? Like, weird comment right there. Therefore, the $125 cost, when divided by the number of enrollees, gives a $12.50 per enrollee cost, $125. That to me was such a weird spot because, they're calculating, if you sell 10 apps, it's $12.50. I'm like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah, these numbers are wild to me. I'm like, where is this coming from? Like, who came up with this number?
Yes. I took a huge chunk on broker compensation. I also put it in ChatGPT to summarize it so we wouldn't be here all night. And it summarized it for me in about 1 page. So I'm going to read this. The provided text discusses concerns related to compensation of agents and brokers in context to Medicare Advantage MA plans. Mentions that these agents and brokers play a crucial role. I found that kind of interesting. In helping Medicare beneficiaries choose appropriate plans, but also highlights potential issues, such as financial incentives that may lead to the enrollment of beneficiaries in plans that do not best suit their healthcare needs. The text points out that these concerns have promoted the need for regulatory changes to ensure that agents and brokers compensation aligns with the goals of enrolling individuals in the most suitable MA plan. The MA marketplace has been has seen consolation among larger organizations, allowing them to offer financial incentives to agents and brokers in ways that might go beyond established compensation limits. So that's what they're really focused on here. Established compensation limits.
Right.
There's a lot of things that go into this category, from override to marketing money to all of the above.
So, I have something I really want to talk about that came up in the comments. Finish this page, and then we'll get into all of it.
Okay. The rising complaints about Medicare Advantage marketing practices and beneficiary confusion due to high-pressure sales tactics is also noted and is believed to play a role because of the extra incentives being provided for certain carrier enrollments. It's also believed that this is being funded and funneled through from TPMOs like field marketing organizations on the behalf of broker and agent behavior. There's another page. Okay. The proposed regulatory changes seek to address these issues by prohibiting contract terms that interfere with agents and brokers' ability to recommend suitable plans, setting a single compensation rate for all plans. So this was important, I felt like. So there's a big part that a lot of people have been missing when they've been talking about this publicly. Several times in here, it mentions that they want a scenario where there's a single broker compensation. So it's one off, one all. So it could be something that, from what I've been reading, that marketing money might still be allowed, but at a probably significantly reduced amount, but it's a set amount, right? It's a set amount across the board that everybody has to follow.
Right.
And it can't go any higher, can't go any lower. It also seems like overrides have to be a similar thing. So like if I feel like this is relevant. I spoke with someone this morning who is very close to some of this stuff, and they told me that they interpreted some of this language that I just went through as, right now, there's really not a set criteria on Medicare Advantage levels and overrides, right? Outside of maybe like an Aetna or somebody like that. It might require some of these carriers to have specific set criteria, whether it be agents, apps, whatever the case might be, to reach a certain level of override. That's possible. But again, there's a lot of stuff in here that is, it could be interpreted 10 different ways.
For sure.
Last part, and then I'll be done with this part. The goal is to align agents, brokers, incentives with the best interests with the Medicare beneficiaries. The proposed rule also aims to deter anti-competitive practices and promote fair competition in the MA marketplace. So that was certainly an interesting.
There's a lot. I mean, and
that was about 10 pages, by the way, summarized into like half a page.
Yeah. So before we get too far down this road of the compensation model and all this changing, there's something that came up in the comments that is also a really big deal that we have not talked about. Any California Governor Newsom fans, go ahead, comment below. But Governor Newsom just signed into law essentially a healthcare for all in the state of California, right? Did we not just see that? I mean, that just happened in the last month, right?
I think it was like certain counties or like certain areas. I don't think it was for the whole state, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe one of you.
I thought it was statewide.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong. One of you native Californians will need to help us out with
maybe it wasn't as sweeping as it was meant to look like it was, but at the same time, I'm thinking, man, is that the direction that this is all going? You know, are they
Single
going to?
payer.
So that's what Tony asked in the comments. He said, "What are the odds that this is heading towards single payer?"
I mean, okay. So if I think that goes along the lines of a master plan, though, right? Like, if the master plan is to slowly phase agents and brokerages and distribution out and have everything run through Medicare and the carriers, and then transition from there into single payer, that's a lot easier to do than doing it right now, where you put all these people out of work overnight, right?
It'll never right. It'll never be an overnight. And that's, again, I think that's where a lot of agents think that that's what will happen. No matter how bad the compliance gets, they won't just disappear. These Medicare agents won't just completely disappear overnight. And I think a lot of people think of it that way, like, oh, it's all just going to disappear when I wake up tomorrow.
It's going to be a slow, painful death if it does happen.
Yeah.
I mean, am I wrong about that? Like, a little gruesome, but like, that's how it literally I feel like. It's going to be like, I cut my arm right here, and just slowly the blood flows out, and eventually it gets infected. And
So
my wife wants me to go to the hospital. I won't do it.
So what, I mean, of everything that you've read so far, what's the thing that you think will create the biggest change? Like, what will be the one singular thing that you've read where you're like, this is going to create a lot of change if it happens?
I've read several parts in there, and I don't know if I've gotten to it specifically yet.
Keep going. If you want to keep hitting some of these bullet points too, we can keep rolling.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Oh, this part was kind of interesting. Okay, so they're talking about, in this part right here, the time it takes for storing and recording phone calls. This part was fascinating to me.
Okay.
So we are estimating, I kind of cut off part of it because I couldn't fit it all in the shot, but it says, so it's talking about that. It says we are estimating 30 minutes, half an hour, to account for the time and expense of recording and storing calls, and solicits stakeholder comment on this assumption. As already noted, based on the occupational title, quote, insurance sales agents, we assume a mean hourly wage of $37 an hour.
So it's like $20 is what they're saying.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, we'll give you $20 for the call recording that we're making you guys do.
Thus, the fair market value, FMV, per enrollee, per transcription and recording would be $18.50, $37 an hour for our time, times 30 minutes each. Total cost. Thus, the aggregate cost per enrollee is $31, $18.50 for transcription and recording, plus $12.50 for annual training and testing. The aggregate cost overall new enrollees would be $31 million. 31 times 1 million new enrollees affected annually. Because it's estimating that half of all apps are written by agents. But again, we come back that they don't know. And they've told us they don't know. We have focused on new enrollments since the cost of the administrative activities discussed is preliminary overhead, not closely connected with actual enrollments. So definitely kind of interesting. Okay, so this part I'm going to go into right here talks specifically about FMOs providing leads, FMOs providing additional compensation.
Here we go.
So while MA organizations that are engaged in these types of arrangements, such as paying FMOs for lead generation, activities, and marketing, then giving the leads to the FMOs agents, and then paying a compensation for that same enrollment, might argue that they are not intended to influence an agent or broker in determining which plan best meets their needs. We believe it is likely that these arrangements are having this effect. So basically saying they're like, the FMO would argue this, but they're full of shit is kind of what that they just said.
that kind of ties back into what they were proposing. This is kind of hitting on the issue of eliminating third-party marketing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tied in there.
Yeah, it really is. That's very much so tied in, just like they talked about last time.
We believe that current contracts in place between FMOs and MA plans can trickle down to influence agents and brokers in enrolling more beneficiaries into those plans that also are providing the agents and brokers with leads, regardless of the appropriateness of the plan for the specific member and enrollee. In fact, FMOs could leverage these leads as a form of additional compensation. So, leads is also being put into the term of
As
additional
compensation.
compensation.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
by rewarding agents who enroll beneficiaries into a specific plan with additional leads. Therefore, CMS is required under section blah, blah, blah of the Social Security Act to establish guidelines that will bring the incentives for agents and brokers to enroll individuals in an MA plan that is intended to meet both the healthcare needs for the beneficiary in accordance with the statute. In this rule, we are proposing generally prohibit contract terms between MA organizations and agents, brokers, or other TPMOs that may interfere with agents or brokers' ability to objectively assess the beneficiary's needs and find the best fit for their health care. There's a little bit more. Stay with me, guys.
And did our government body of agents have a response yet, by the way? Has they said anything yet? Or nothing yet, huh? Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
I would love to know.
Okay, here we go. While revising the scope of what is considered compensation and eliminate the regulatory framework which currently allows for separate payments to agents and brokers for administrative services. This was important. I saw this word a lot in this document, administrative services. By definition, CMS calls anything that's not commission administrative services. So anytime they're mentioning that, they mean marketing money, overrides, HRAs, all of this stuff.
And someone just commented, it seems like more of an FMO problem than an independent agent problem. If you're an independent agent and you're getting your leads from your FMO, that is now considered compensation, and you might get cut off from your lead program. So this is not just an FMO issue. It's an everybody issue. This would completely destroy some independent agents.
This starts at the top and trickles down, right? Like, okay, this part is important. We propose to add at the beginning in the contract year 2025, MA organizations must ensure that no provision of a contract with an agent, broker, or TPMO has a direct or indirect effect on creating an incentive that would create reasonably to be expected to inhibit the agent's or broker's ability to objectively pick a plan based on the healthcare needs of the beneficiary. Examples of anti-competitive contract terms we intend to prohibit would include, for instance, and then it mentions a whole bunch of stuff. It mentions, and it doesn't specifically say override by the term override, doesn't say marketing money by that term, but I think you guys kind of get the picture. Yeah, it's very vague in many ways. Like, it's not 100%.
Which is to be anticipated. Again, guys, something to keep in mind. I mean, Christian's literally reading verbatim from the document. Some of this stuff isn't clear. A lot of it's proposed. So again, sometimes they're just trying to put framework around ideas on paper, and then what actually comes out of it will be completely different, or it might not, come to fruition at all. So keep that in mind as this is being discussed, and as everyone spirals over the next 60, 90 days until we get, I don't know. When do you think we'll hear the finality of a lot of this language? March?
They're going to meet about it in January. It could be January. It could be never. Like they could meet about it in January and be like, yeah, this is bullshit. Like, and then nothing ever happens, like that's always a possibility. Although I wouldn't think that that's exactly going to be the case. Tony said November
Yeah, November
2024.
2024. I mean, yeah, maybe we wait till the election and see who gets to actually dictate all these new rules. I mean, this is a lot.
Um,
One thing I wanted to bring up really fast. So someone talked about the California um, new healthcare law that came into place. So Senate Bill 770, signed by Gavin Newsom earlier this month, directs California's Health and Human Services Agency to work with the federal government to create one health financing system that would manage healthcare for all Californians. This is the first step to implementing a single payer plan because California receives large federal contributions for healthcare, including Medicare, all of which would need to be folded into this one payer system. And it goes on and on. But the point being, that is something that's a whole nother part of this conversation where that train's already, it's more real than it's ever been, I guess you could say, in that context. I don't know if there's very many other, I mean, California is just the biggest state. So even if there's some of these other smaller states that have done stuff like that, California sometimes will set a trend that a lot of states follow. So, is this a domino that's one of the first single payer dominoes that we just witnessed that fall, and now CMS is coming through a month later and they're looking at it and they're like, okay, well, let's start cutting comp. And someone's got a machete out and they're just hacking comp away. So I don't know. It does seem like the writing's on the wall a bit here. It's going to be tough to continue to speculate on this until we get some finality. Just again, guys, this is like my fourth rodeo of going through these CMS rules and watching all of the hype and the panic and then seeing how much of it comes out the other side. I don't want to give it too much mental space until I have more of a finality or maybe senior people telling me what they're hearing. Again, it's hard for me to even trust some of these people that I've known for years because they don't even actually know. They're just saying what their best guess is. So that's my disclaimer as far as any of this information being discussed. I'd love to keep this comment thread going, you guys, even after the video's over. Keep adding your comments. Let's keep this conversation going. That's why Christian and I really wanted to do this, is to really jumpstart this conversation in the agent community, make sure everybody's aware of what's going on. And, to CMS's, to their good side, I guess they are asking for feedback. They said they want comments. Someone said in the comments that you can only mail it. Is that true? You have to snail mail?
You can do it online. So they're in the document. There's a website you can go to that you can do it. But there is also an option to snail mail. It specifically says they do not want faxes though. So there's that.
No faxes.
But yes, there is different ways you can provide feedback because it did so much good the last two times, right? The feedback.
Yeah.
I encourage you to do the feedback. I wouldn't get your hopes up that it will have much of an impact.
I want to know, kind of, we've talked a lot about a lot of different things. Based on where everything sits right now as of this minute, what's kind of your final thoughts regarding this entire conversation?
My final thoughts would be, I think this could potentially be devastating for FMOs and with in turn of domino effect agents as well. Because if the agents can't get the same kind of support from their FMO, that hurts their business, point blank. And so now what I believe is probably going to happen, I think there's a lot of very powerful organizations that will be impacted by this potentially.
Right.
And I'm not talking about CBIS. I'm not talking about Christian Brindle Insurance. I'm talking about multi-billion-dollar organizations, private equity organizations that have ownership in some of the biggest organizations possible.
The carriers. I mean, it's going to affect everybody.
I would expect tons of lobbying. I would expect maybe even potential lawsuits, right? Like there once upon a time, Galen Hendricks, our Medicare mom, along with Manhattan Life, sued the government over the Affordable Care Act for compensation, and they won. We might see something like that potentially. I think it's going to be a big fight. I think it's going to be a bloody, bloody fight before something like that that could potentially bring them FMOs to their knees would actually happen. But I don't think it's good for the industry. I don't think it's good at all. I think it's bad, and we have to pay attention to this. And I would recommend providing as much feedback as possible. I just wouldn't be so naive to think that like your feedback is going to change everything, but it's worth a shot.
Yeah, I think everyone, the net neutrality thing was a similar issue. Tons of comments didn't really mean anything to anybody, but I think everyone should comment. I really do. I think everyone should submit their opinion on this to CMS, because it's not fair. It's not fair how these rules get implemented without consideration of the agent or the owner of the agency or anyone else that's in the industry. Like we should have more of a say than we do, in my opinion.
Can I say one more thing that I didn't get a chance to? I was thinking about it several times and I lost it. Think about this. Let's say there's a world where FMOs basically their override gets cut so significantly that it's not even worth them working with you as an agent, right? There's not enough profit for them to keep the lights on.
They'll terminate the contract.
Here's what will happen. A lot of these FMOs will pivot, get all their people licensed, and become your competitors.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because they want to stay in the business. They want to make money somehow.
100%.
It's the only way they'll be able to make business potentially, There's a huge possibility of dominoes that could happen as a result, potentially, depending on how this turns out. So I wanted to mention that before I forgot about it.
Well, guys, unfortunately, we are coming to the end of the live stream. Obviously, this is really just an introduction to this whole conversation. I don't think this is something we're not going to talk about in the near future. We'll obviously bring you up-to-date information as we hear it. Any links we get, we'll post. Christian has the screenshots of some of the stuff that he was reading about. I think I did see a few comments ask for those, so maybe you could post some of those in this thread. And if you're watching this live, thank you so much for supporting us and hearing us out. If you're on Team Replay, drop a comment, Team Replay, and let us know. And keep those questions coming. Like I said, I want to keep this conversation going. This has been awesome.
Yep. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Happy AE and to pay. Somebody said CMS is going to acquire CMS. Integra is going to acquire CMS, acquire them, and that'll end this.
100% regulatory capture. We're buying the capitalist society. We've got the businesses just buying the government. I love it.
You win the internet, by the way. Whoever commented that made me smile. All right, guys. Happy AEP. Later. We'll give you updates as we get them. Later, guys.